Welcome back, and this is an incident of medical negligence from West Bengal, where a 16-year-old boy died in an ambulance that allegedly had an air conditioning mechanic posing as a doctor. The boy, who was being brought from Burdwan to Kolkata for treatment, was declared dead on arrival at the hospital. According to the police, the man had placed an oxygen mask and thought that it was enough to sustain him for over the 100-kilometer journey. The fake doctor and the ambulance driver have been arrested by the police yesterday from the hospital premises itself.
নার্স দেওয়া হয়েছিল তাদের গাড়িতে?
না না, আমাদের এখান থেকে কোনো গাড়িও দেওয়া হয়নি, আর কোনো ডাক্তার ও নার্স কিছু দেওয়া হয়নি।
তাহলে যে ডাক্তার ছিল তারা তাহলে কারা?
সেটা আমাদের জানা নেই।
তারা কি আদৌ কি ডাক্তার ছিল?
আমি দেখি নাই।
কি শুনলেন আপনি?
আমি শুনলাম যে উনি ডাক্তার নন, কোনো হয়তো আইসিইউ টেকনিশিয়ান এসব হতে পারে।
Shreyashi joining us now with the phone line. Shreyashi, so there was an air conditioning mechanic instead of a doctor inside that ambulance, due to which this man, what we're given to understand, lost his life. They both have been arrested, the driver as well as the air conditioning mechanic. But the fact remains, this is absolute heights of medical apathy there. Shocking case coming to light.
Right, this highlights the plight of the medical condition here in the state. This particular student, who was giving his class 10 board exam, complained of breathlessness. That's when he was rushed to the hospital. The hospital said that he needs to be referred to a better hospital in the city of Kolkata. That's when he had to travel about 100 kilometers from the district to the city. The father hired an ambulance from outside the hospital, which is what usually happens around this city and the state. There are different people who have their ambulance on standby, and they negotiate and come to an understanding, and then they take the patient wherever the patient is required to be taken. And this particular student, when was brought to Kolkata, was declared dead. And that's when the father went up to the doctor, the fake doctor who was in the ambulance, and asked him what was his name and what was his ID number, so that he could look him up on the net, because he had just lost his 16-year-old son who was sitting for a board exam, and he was a topper of his class, in fact. And that's when the fake doctor said that he was actually not a doctor but a technician. When he was grilled further, that's when he said that he was actually an AC mechanic who was assisting the driver in that ambulance. So this highlights really the medical apathy that's there in the state, and how people get away with such criminal activities. But however, the police immediately rushed to the hospital and arrested the driver and the fake doctor who posed as the doctor inside the ambulance, and both of them have been arrested and charged with causing death due to negligence, cheating, threatening to cause death, and grievous hurt and common intention. So those are very strict charges that have been pressed against these two criminals. But the larger picture is that how is this being allowed in the state?
Yes, Shreyashi also mentioned that these ambulances are usually standing outside the hospital. So who's to be held accountable? Is the hospital also to be held accountable to let such ambulances stand outside their premises? And who is responsible for putting out the duty of for carrying a patient in an ambulance? What I'm trying to understand is that, is the hospital also going to be questioned, and would the hospital would also be under the radar now?
Well, we heard the hospital manager's soundbite a short while back, and he says that we did not arrange the ambulance. It was not a part of the hospital. So it was the family that decided on the ambulance that was going to take the student to the city for medical care. But what happens around in and around the city is basically there are various clubs, these smaller clubs that have ambulances on standby to help people. But whether they are medically certified, whether the people who are driving and assisting the patient inside the ambulance go through a proper check whether they are professionals is something that the state needs to look into, because these are government hospitals, outside government hospitals, where these ambulances stand by to ferry people from one hospital to another. Remember, the government hospitals have a lot of patients coming in from different districts of the state, and not just the urban population. There is a lot of rural population that come in for medical care on a daily basis. So these ambulances stand by and they go and they speak to the patient party and they negotiate on the fee, and that's when they come to a common understanding before the patient is ferried. So this is something that the state needs to look into and check on whether these are professional people or they are just fake technicians who dress up as doctors.
Absolutely. Shreshi, we'll track the story with you. Thanks for getting us those updates there. And with that, it's time for us to wrap up this bulletin.